Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be doing another after action report. That's right, it's time for some dispatches from the front lines. And oh boy, do I have a genuinely spicy meatball for your viewing pleasure today. Because not only did I take my Imperial Guard, the Emperor's true finest, to an event, but I also took Recon Guard. But this ain't any old Recon Guard. You guys asked for it. You guys demanded it. And I delivered. Gentlemen, it's time to unleash the Baneblade!
All guardsmen, follow me to glory!
As is tradition, I want to start off with a few thank yous. I want to say a massive thank you to Just Play Games, who were the tournament organisers and the hosts for this event. Look, if you've been watching my videos for any length of time, you will have heard me talk about Just Play. They're a fantastic, quintessential, friendly local gaming store, and there's a reason that I like going to their events. They just have the right vibe. They're a ton of fun and I can't recommend them enough. Now, they're just a small local friendly gaming store, but they really do punch well above their weight. And a lot of the staff are really experienced when it comes to playing Warhammer and running events, which is fantastic. And the players there, they just get it as well. And one thing I always appreciate about Just Play is they do try and level up their events. So they're a small store, but they're constantly trying to invest in new terrain to make sure that they're playing on the relevant formats like UKTC and all that kind of good stuff, which is fantastic when you want to go to a tournament and get that competitive experience. I also want to say a big thank you to every single one of my opponents, because you can't have a good event and a good game of Warhammer 40k without the people on the other side of the table just being fantastic. And every single one of the people that I play in this event was just great. And it's another reason why I like playing at Just Play. The people there, the community, it's just awesome. So if you're just looking for just a classic RTT, you're just looking for a friendly local tournament, Just Play and its community have got you covered. And I want to make something abundantly clear. I don't know if I've ever said this before, but I don't get free tickets for going to events. I choose to buy the tickets for every event that I go to. Even if I get offered a free ticket, I still choose to buy it. And the reason for that is I don't want there to be any doubt. I want you guys to know that when I talk about something like this, it's my honest opinion. It's what I actually believe. And I choose to go to Just Play and play in their events because I think the venue's decent, I think the hosts are great, and I think the community is fantastic. It's just that simple. But with all of that glazing done, now let's move on to the video proper, and we'll begin with the army list overview. As per usual, I have recorded a separate video going into the nitty-gritty detail of the army list, properly deep diving it. And if you want to find that video, then there will be a link down in the description for it. But for those of you who just want a quick summary of the list now, here is what I was running. It was 2,000 points on the nose, and the detachment was Recon. Starting off, I had Lord Soul at Leontus as my Warlord, and then I had Ursula Creed, 2 Cadian command squads, and 2 Tech Priest Enginseers. I then had 4 bricks of Cadian shock troops. Every single brick had 2 sergeants with auto guns, 2 Vox casters, 2 melter guns, and 2 plasma guns, and everyone else had las rifles. You may have noticed that I was running 4 big blobs of Cadians rather than 2 blobs of Cadians and maybe 2 smaller squads for the command blobs. I decided I actually just wanted that many infantry. I really wanted to have 80 bodies on the board. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I am in the Recon detachment. And rather than trying to fanny around and having separate command blobs, I just thought, screw it, I'll put Lord Soul and Ursula Creed in the frontline infantry. And if they end up getting exposed in line of fire, it's fine because I'll just be pushing them forward, doing primary game anyway. Yes, it was a little bit of a risk, but it was a decision that I had to make if I wanted to get the amount of infantry I wanted for this list and the amount of orders. Basically, a bit of a compromise. But moving on, I had 2 squads of Catachan heavy weapon teams with mortars. I never leave home without some indirect fire. Every single tournament that I go to, even just a little bit of cheap indirect like with these mortars, saves my ass, saves my bacon, helps me at least win one game. And even in the games where they're not that useful, they're not holding me back either. Cheap units that can sit on my home objective and do some shooting. Can't complain. I also had another support unit with a scout sentinel, basically just there as an early secondary objective go-getter. I don't want to expose something big and important to get something like extend battle lines in the first turn. And then, of course, we had the big boys. Not 1, but 2 Baneblades, fully loaded up with all of the options you can take for them. Now, the reason I ended up with 2 Baneblades is actually quite simple. I was always going to be taking 1 because the theme and the meme behind this list is Recon in force, and the reason why you want to take a Baneblade in a Recon detachment is because the Baneblade hands out cover to infantry around it, so then if they've got cover it starts triggering the bonus effect of the Recon detachment, all of that kind of good stuff. So Baneblades in Recon detachment are a bit of a meme, and there's a bit of a theory around them actually being kind of useful, so I was always going to take 1 of them. I then started looking at taking some other firepower in my list, and I was looking at like armored sentinels or scout sentinels, and I realized I was just spending as much points on taking this accoutrement, as it were, as just taking a second Baneblade. And I thought to myself, what's actually going to do more damage here? Some slightly better indirect with some artillery teams and 3 squads of armored sentinels, or just another Baneblade? And I figured, you know what? Actually just taking another Baneblade totally makes sense. And let me tell you, I didn't regret it. In essence, long story short, it was basically more convenient to take a second Baneblade than it was to mess around with all of the other stuff. And I absolutely love that. Go big or go home. But that just about covers the army list, so now let's take a look at the lay of the land. So this was a pretty classic RTT event. It was a 2,000 point, 1 day, 3 round tournament. Most of the games were being played on UKTC terrain, however there were 1 or 2 tables that were with the Just Play terrain format. Just Play has their own terrain format, but they've basically been transitioning over to UKTC, and the majority of my games, the majority of games that were played at this event, were on UKTC terrain. But the big question is, how competitive was this event? I would describe it as pretty competitive. It wasn't an absolute Shark Tank, but it wasn't an exercise in seal clubbing. I would say it was 1 above semi-competitive, especially if you take into account 10th edition tournaments as a whole. What I mean by this is late stage 10th edition. Everyone who is at tournaments at this point are people who have been to tournaments before. So no one there was an absolute greenhorn, and everyone there had at least 1, 2, probably 3 tournaments under their belt, and they knew what they were doing. So everyone was experienced, but it wasn't everyone running the most meta list that you could find. It was people just running the best stuff that they could with the collections that they had, but with everyone knowing what the hell they were doing. But you know what? I think that's enough pre-game preamble. I know why you're all really here. So without further ado, let's get into the games. So game number 1 was against Sam and his Imperial Guard. But it wasn't just any Imperial Guard. He is a fellow Mordian Iron Guard player. Yes! Mordy Bros unite. Absolutely fantastic way to start the event. And I have to say, his Mordian army was beautiful. All the tanks were really, really well painted, and he had a few Mordian infantry as armoured fist squads, and they were just impeccably painted as well. He is definitely doing the Iron Guard proud. Now, in his list, which was named Meet Me in the Car Park, love it, we have got Gaunt's Ghosts, a Lehman Russ Commander with Demolisher battle cannon, and he also had the plasma cannons. He also had another Leman Russ commander with a Demolisher battle cannon and the plasma cannons and Lascannons. And then he had Lord Sol Leontus and a Rogel Dawn commander with the oppressor cannon and the pulverizer cannon, and he had the heavy bolter setup for his, so more of a Dakar Dawn. He then had Slime Arbo. There were 2 units of Catachan jungle fighters with the flamers, and he had 2 chimeras for the Catachans to go inside of, and then there were 2 Leman Russ battle tanks in the El Clasico configuration, a Leman Russ exterminator, a squad of Ogren, and a squad of Ratlings. All of this could be found inside of a 2,000 point army in the Hammer of the Emperor detachment. So it was going to be a tank-on-tank battle. He's brought lots of little and medium tanks, and I have brought 2 very big tanks. It's going to be quantity versus quality. The mission for round 1 was taken hold. Both players took tactical objectives, and we were playing on the just play terrain format, but you can see it's perfectly dense. It's just an alternative to something like UKTC and all that kind of stuff. But for those of you that like your standardized and well-known terrain formats, Game 2 and Game 3 are played on UKTC terrain. Now, the deployment for this mission was search and destroy. That's essentially table quarters. For my deployment, it's pretty straightforward. I put half my infantry with 1 Baneblade on the left flank, half my infantry with a Baneblade on the right flank, Scout Sentinel in the middle. That was it. As for Sam's deployment, it was very similar. He had about half his armor going up here on the left, half of his armor going down here on the right. Lord Solar just sat there getting some extra command points and being able to order some of the officers early on. And then he had his Ogrins a bit further forward, and he had Gaunt's Ghost infiltrate up here, and then Slime Arbo in reserve. With everything deployed, we roll off to see who gets the first turn, and I win the roll-off. Now, going first in a game of 40k is never ideal. You do typically want to go second, but it is what it is. So I went first, and I was kind of okay with it because I had noticed that there was an angle for me to come down here and draw line of sight over to Sam's Leman Russ, and he had a Leman Russ tank commander here with Demolisher cannon, and I knew I wanted to take that out straight away. So even though I knew it would expose me to some clapback between my 4+ invulnerable save, the fact that I can pop smoke, and the fact that I'm just a goddamn Baneblade, I figured I could take the clapback even this early on, considering that half his armor is kind of down here, and this Demolisher cannon wouldn't be in range. So I just bring this Baneblade forward, I get very aggressive with it, I bring the infantry behind, I push my infantry into the middle of the board as well, with the Sentinel, just to do some secondary objectives. And then down here, I'm very conservative. There's no point in me running out here and taking this objective early on. All I'm going to do is get blasted. For me, I'm happy to essentially hold my home objective, hold this objective, stage for this objective, stage down here, and just start blasting. That's exactly what I do. So I actually successfully destroy that Leman Russ tank commander, and I'm not going to lie, it did come down to a little bit of bad luck on Sam's part. He did pop smoke. Even with him popping smoke, I did okay on my hits and on my wounds, and then he did particularly badly on his saves. And bear in mind, this was done without my Demolisher cannon being in range, because I'd done that so that Sam couldn't get his Demolisher cannon back in range for death befitting an officer. And so essentially I was able to take this tank commander out of the fight with 4 Lascannons, an autocannon, 5 twin heavy bolters, a heavy stubber, and the main Baneblade gun. The thing is, right, the main Baneblade gun isn't actually that bad. It's just real swingy. But when you've got take aim, even if you're hitting on 4s, you've got take aim, you're hitting on 4s, but you know, I got 13 shots for my first Baneblade wave, then I got like 8 hits, then I wounded like 6 times. And then, yeah, Sam's on a 3-up save there, but he just failed 3 of his saves. It wasn't like he was super unlucky, but instead of failing only 2 of them, he failed 3 of them. That's just 9 damage straight through. All I need at that point is for a couple of heavy bolters to chip off a wound, for one of the Lascannons to get through, and it pops. One of the things that really, I think, stood out to me in this game is people are not used to fighting against guard super heavies. Even other guard players, and even people like myself who play with super heavies, I play with guard, I don't use my super heavies very often. You forget just how much firepower a guard super heavy can pump out, especially when supported by an order like Lord Solar. You kind of look at them and think, oh, it's like facing an Imperial Knight or facing a Chaos Knight. You know, it's got like one sort of big gun on there. It's not so bad. But you've actually rocking so much firepower here. You don't have any melee capability. All of your damage output comes from firepower, and it really has a lot. And as long as that Baneblade cannon doesn't just roll like ass, you will fairly reliably roll forward and just smoke at least one enemy unit a turn with a super heavy. And if the enemy isn't really prepared for that, it can really throw a spanner in the works. Now that basically concluded my turn 1, so we go over to Sam's turn 1, and he basically just moves out with his tanks. Now there is actually a firing lane across here. These 2 small squares here, they don't block line of sight, they just provide cover. And so he actually moves most of his firepower around to here and then unleashes into my Baneblade. But I just pop smoke on it, and between that, having a 2-up save, having a 4th and vulnerable save, I was just totally fine. I mean, I maybe took 6 wounds or something. It wasn't huge, like a couple of damage 3 shots went through, but I was totally fine, and my Baneblade basically shrugged off the combined firepower of 2 Leman Russes and a Rogal Dawn. No dramas whatsoever. And obviously, that's not good for Sam, because he's just gone for a big push, and it hasn't really paid off. And now I get to go for a big push. And I decide that turn 2, I'm going to unleash double Baneblade. I am going to establish the Mordian 50th Rifles as the dominant Iron Guard regiment. And I roll out. I think about it for like a couple of seconds. I'm like, is it too early to go for this? And sometimes you can feel like you're pushing too early, but my gut was telling me. I don't do a lot of math, Hammer. I don't really think in those kind of ways. I just go off what my gut tells me. My gut was saying that I could land a hammer blow my turn 2, and I could get ahead on this. And so that's exactly what I do. And I roll out this Baneblade here. I roll out this Baneblade here. I push forward with an infantry blob here. And there's also like a Chimera that's here as well. And my Baneblade here destroys the Leman Russ commander with the Demolisher cannon, and then it just takes the clapback from death befitting an officer, because I think Sam rolled like 3 shots on his Demolisher cannon, and I was just able to tank it. I think he got 3 shots off, got a couple of hits, got a wound, and then I just saved up my 4 pin bum. Just that simple. And then all the other shots sort of went into my infantry blob down here, but that was fine. Now, speaking of infantry blobs, these 2 infantry blobs essentially cracked open the Chimera, and then I charged the guys that survived getting out and wiped them out, claiming that objective. So between these 2 infantry blobs and this Baneblade, we take out a Leman Russ commander, we take out a Chimera, we take out the infantry squad, and then over on this flank, I actually move forward, and I get a little ballsy. But there's another Chimera that with an infantry squad that had moved on to this objective, and there was a Leman Russ that was here. And what happens is I crack open the Chimera with all of my infantry firepower, because what's interesting is Chimeras are like T9, so melter guns are wounding them on 4s, and I basically got everyone into like melter range that I needed to. So even just one melter gun getting through just strips out so many wounds from that, and then between plasma guns and all that kind of stuff, it was pretty easy to just crack open that Chimera and then, you know, finish off the guys inside with actually a cheeky charge and a tank shock from the Baneblade and the Lord Solar's unit. Speaking of the Baneblade up here, it just swept aside another Leman Russ. And at this point at the end of turn 2, and it's kind of crazy to say this, but hey, late stage 10th edition, boys. This game is basically in the bag at this point, because I've taken out all of the objective control my opponent really has. I'm winning the firefight with my tanks, and my opponent essentially has got 2 Leman Russes left, and a Rogaldorn, and some Ogryns, and some utility units like Gaunt's Ghost and Marbo. Like, at that point, I'm just happy to just roll forward and whatever. I'll take casualties. I'll take a lot of casualties, but I'm happy to just roll forward and start just mopping up. Of course, that is not to diminish the efforts of Sam. He still gives it a good go. He still gives it a good game. In his turn 2, he rolls forward with his remaining armor. He does clear out the infantry platoon here. He does do a number on Creed's platoon here. He does get the Ogryns into this infantry platoon here and does a number on them. You can see the casualties. But it's all my infantry dying, and now his remaining tanks are exposed, and it is time for the Baneblades just to clean up. And this was the situation at the end of my turn 3. Leman Russ cleared here. Leman Russ cleared here. Ogryn cleared. Rogaldorn and the Lord Solar and there's like the Gaunt's Ghosts are down here. Marbo is bumming around in reserve, and that's basically it. Sam's turn 3. He obviously goes to the Hail Mary. He brings the Rogaldorn forward. He pours everything from the Rogaldorn into the Baneblade, but my Tech Priest has been healing it up. So basically, any damage that he'd done, by the time the Rogaldorn comes flying in, is undone. And so the Rogaldorn comes in, and then he hasn't got lethal hits, so any of his weapons like the Pulverizer Cannon and stuff like that, the Oppressor Cannon, like it's all wounding me on 5s, and I've got a 4-up save, and I've got a 2+ armor save, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a good, valiant effort, but at this point, it's not going to change the course of history. And so we get to the end of turn 4 and turn 5, and it's very quick. Turn 4, I kill his Rogaldorn. Turn 5, he yeets like Gaunt's Ghost and Marbo have been like in my back line. You can see my mortars have like died. And turn 5, my Baneblade just comes back and just picks both of those up. And that's basically it. End of my turn 5. Sam has got the Lord Solar sat on his home objective, but he is the sole survivor of the entire army. And we're still rocking double Baneblade, and we've still got 3 of the 4 infantry platoons still left alive. Admittedly, albeit Creed's is badly mauled, and also one of the ones over here has taken some damage as well. And so that was the first game. It was very quick. We finished with about an hour to spare, which is pretty unheard of in Warhammer 40k. But I just want to do a special shout out to Sam because, you know, in the face of what was a little bit of a one-sided smashing, he was an absolute gent. Didn't get tilted once, didn't get salty once, you know, just roll with the punches. Whenever any misfortune befell him, you know, just laughed it off. You know, if my dice got a little hot in some places, like we said early on, and his dice were a little cool in places, he didn't let it bother him at all, and it was truly a fun game to play. And look, let me tell you, I've played against a lot of people. I've been in this situation before where the game is a little bit one-sided. That can just be the nature of 40k sometimes, and you know, some people handle it better than others, and generally I think everyone's is pretty reasonable about it, but you can see when someone's a little bit down the mouth and whatnot. And I would say that Sam was just a proper officer and a gentleman and a scholar, and he made this game a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed it. If I was to do a little bit of post-game tactical analysis, this I think was a great example of Hammer of the Emperor having some weaknesses. So I know that a lot of people really like Hammer of the Emperor, and I know that a lot of people really like Rogaldorns and stuff like that. But the big issue I find with Hammer of the Emperor is that it lacks lethal hits. And hey, when you're playing into a meta that's mostly elite infantry, that's fine. And there are plenty of elite infantry metas out there. Of course there are. You know, Space Marines are tearing up at the moment. Victrix Guard, all that kind of stuff, right? But the thing is, Hammer of the Emperor, it really can struggle when it starts getting into just someone has bigger tanks than that. Maybe not even bigger tanks, just comparable tanks to it. I find Hammer can struggle in that guard-on-guard matchup. And it also has some fairly obvious crutches, things like, you know, the Exterminator and stuff like that. So this was an example of where if Sam had combined arms, I think he could have made a much closer game of this, simply because he would have had lethal hits. It's just that simple. He would have had lethal hits. But the fact that he didn't have lethal hits meant that I was kind of able to roll around with impunity once the Demolishers were gone. Now, even if I wasn't running double Baneblade, I know there's a little bit of a skew, right? It's obviously a bit of a skew list. It's a bit of a stat check. I get it. But even if I wasn't running double Baneblade, let's say I was running my traditional guard army, fleet of like 5 Leman Russes, maybe 80 infantry, maybe 5 armor fist squads. If I was running that list, I'd be running it in combined arms. And again, I think I have the firepower advantage in that situation. And once those 2 Demolishers are down, I'm happy to let battle tanks ping shells off me and let the Demolisher, not the Demolisher, the Rogel Dawn ping shots off me. So look, I really, really like Hammer the Emperor, and a lot of people like Hammer the Emperor, and a lot of people wank it off, and a lot of other guard players and content creators are big fans of Hammer the Emperor, but I don't think Hammer the Emperor is point and click auto good. I think it really does come down to what you play into. It's very matchup dependent, and I think it can struggle into other guard armies, and I think it can struggle the moment that, because its USP is basically, hey, I'm the tank faction, and the moment that someone else is like, well, I also have a lot of tanks, it can kind of start struggling. So I do like Hammer, but I think this was a good example of what you lose when you give up lethal hits. But that's a little bit of tactical analysis. Now let's move on to game number 2. So with one victory under the belt, it was time to get into game number 2. And this time, I would be playing against Dean and his Dark Elder. Now, this was my first time playing against the new Dark Elder Codex since it came out. And what I thought was kind of interesting is, whilst there were a few new units in here, such as there were some Harlequins, which I've not seen in a little while, the overall feel of the Dark Elder hadn't changed too much from when I last faced them, which was just before they got their index. They're still super fast, and they're still pretty fragile, and Lilith still picks up entire platoons of guardsmen single-handedly. But not to give too much away, what was in Dean's army? He was running the Reaper's Wager detachment. He had Lady Malice, Lilith Hesperax, a Solitaire, an Archon with Arch Raider, a Succubus, 10 Cabalite Warriors, 2 squads of Racks, 1 of 5, 1 of 10, and then he had a squad of 5 Incubi, and there were 2 squads of Mandrakes, 2 squads of Scourges with Dark Lances, 3 Venoms, a squad of 5 Hellions, 3 Reavers, 2 Talos, and 2 Void Reavers. Void Weavers. Reavers are the bikes. Weavers are the buggies. The mission for round 2 was Terraform, and we were playing on UKTC terrain this time, and we were on the Sweeping Engagement deployment. Speaking of deployment, I found the terrain in this game a lot more restrictive because of the size of my Baneblades. I did think about putting a Baneblade on this flank here, but it couldn't actually fit through that gap. And I figured whilst it could cover this objective, I could actually equally cover this objective if I deployed here, and I could cover here, and then I could still actually move out and do stuff. So due to the nature of the deployment map, I actually ended up putting both Baneblades over here and also all of my infantry over here, bar a single platoon of guardsmen, which I deployed here. As for Dean, we had 2 Void Weavers and the Talos on my left flank. We had Lady Malice and the Cabalite she was with in the middle, some bikes in the middle as well, and then over on the right flank we had things like the Archon, and we had the Racks as well, and I also there was also in the middle there were the Witches with Lilith. In reserve, there were the 2 squads of Scourges. With everything deployed, it was time to go for that all-important roll-off. And once again, I was firmly in command, not Skinwalker Mordian, and I got the first turn. Now, I was acutely aware that the Void Weavers that were rocking around here had Haywire. And Haywire does devastating wounds, and so it kind of just completely negates my Baneblade toughness, and also the fact that they're like flat damage 3 on those things as well. So I really didn't want to move out and just get absolutely slotted by the Void Weavers. They had like 6 shots. They could have done like 18 damage in like one go. And they're lone op as well. So what I actually ended up doing is having a very conservative turn 1. Except I went Billy Big Bollocks with Creed's Blob. And the reason I did that was quite simple. I really wanted to draw... I wanted to draw things out. Especially the Talos. Because I reckon I can handle the Void Weavers or the Talos as Haywire. But I don't think I can handle both lots of Haywire. So I moved these guys up here, hoping it would draw the Talos out. And then I could move the Baneblade round, blast the Talos, and then take the clap back from anything that decides to come near. I also wanted to spread out my infantry screen as well, because if those Scourges want to come deep striking down, like say turn 2, for example, if that all goes off, then I can go, nope, you're not coming within 12 inches of me. Stay away, you nasty Scourging bastard. I also moved forward with this platoon here. And there was actually a unit of Mandrakes that had infiltrated onto this objective. And Dean was going to do the reactive move with it. But unfortunately, he just forgot. Straight forgot. And it wasn't until we were well past it when he was like, oh my God, I should have done the reactive move there. Now, ironically, in the same place later on, around my turn 2, my turn 3, I make exactly the same mistake, and I forget to reactive move this platoon, and it completely dies. So it's kind of funny. This was the flank of forgetfulness. I was also able to pick up another unit of racks by just combining my mortars onto them. And even though I was struggling to hit them, I got pretty good rolls with my mortars. I was able to get enough rolls to get the hits. Once I've got the hits, the wounds are pretty easy. And Mandrakes aren't that hard to kill because I've only got like 1 wound each. So a couple of more squads were able, with a bit of luck, to pick up the units of the unit of Mandrakes that was on this objective here. And that was my turn 1. We then go over to Dark Elder Dean's turn 1, and he doesn't fall for my traps, unfortunately. So he doesn't end up bringing anything over here, which I really wanted him to do, because then I'd be able to counter push him. And he doesn't bring anything out here because obviously the Baneblade's waiting. What he does is he takes the 2 Void Weavers and then he puts them in the back corner here because they've got lone op. So he can shoot my guys here, but my Baneblade basically can't move out and do anything meaningful. His turn 1 is basically just staging up in this ruin here and doing a bit of shooting with the Void Weavers, and that was it. So we go into my turn 2, and I really want to start putting the pressure on Dean. I really want to make him come out here and do some stuff. So what I do is I stage up in the middle, I keep my Baneblades in waiting here, and then I push forward this infantry block here to try and put some firepower downrange against the Venoms. And then I move this infantry blob very aggressively forward because I'm trying to take out the Void Weavers. Because I'm thinking to myself, even if I can take out just 1 Void Weaver with a full platoon of Guardsmen, then that means I can probably start pushing with the Baneblade. Unfortunately, none of my plans come to fruition at all. And I don't manage to kill either one of the units here. The only thing that goes well is my mortars start pouring fire into the racks. Now, yes, they've got to feel no pain, but they're not that hard to kill. They're not, weirdly, they kind of balance out feeling about as tough to kill as the Mandrakes because they've not got the mass one to hit, but they have got the feel no pain. And I'm able to wound them on 3s and all that kind of jazz. And so I was actually able to whittle down the racks pretty effectively and just start removing those backfield objective holders, because that's what I want to do. I want to take away all of the objective holders that Dean has with my mortars to try and force him to use expensive units to do things like actions like terraform and stuff. We go into Dean's turn 2, and the Dark Elder have their first go turn. He brings the Talos round here and starts blasting into my infantry here on the left flank. And between the shooting and the charging, he does clear all of Creed's platoon. I was kind of hoping a few would survive. I even do things like Courageous Defiance on them. I actually even go for like go to ground them. I'm really poor. I pour like 2 CP into this unit to try and keep them alive, and they just fail. They just utterly fail. I roll like absolute ass on my saves, and they just are unable to save anything, and loads of them die in shooting, and all of them die in combat as well for the Talos. So that was a bit of a shame. Dean then also yeets forward a unit of witches with a succubus into this squad of infantry on the right flank, and this is where I forgot to do my reactive move. Completely forgot to do it. So this objective was cursed. Anyone who was on it forgot to do a reactive move. And so they all end up dying, obviously. And then Lilith comes in and utterly butchers the Lord Solar squad. I wasn't expecting him to do that. Now, I know Lilith is very good, and I know that she can kill all that stuff, but I wasn't expecting her to do that just because I still had quite a lot of assets that could clear up. Now, critically, the Lord Solar and the platoon commander survive. Now, that's very important because it means I can still get orders on this Baneblade here, and I can still get orders on things like the other units that are around. If you look, the Lord Solar can easily order like this and this and this. So, critically, the Lord Solar survives, but everyone else, except the platoon commander as well, dies. So we go into battle round 3, and I realize that I've just lost essentially 3 out of 4 infantry blobs. I need to get these Baneblades into the fight now. I cannot afford to hold them back any longer. Even though I know there are reserves, there are Dark Lancers and Deep Strike, I know that I need to bring them to the fight, and I just need to trust to my 4+ invulnerable save and the fact that I am toughness 13 to see me through. So Baneblade number 1 on the left flank rolls forward and deletes the Talos. That's good. That's like half of the haywire dealt with. And then Baneblade number 2 rolls forward, and it is able to basically completely clear out the center. There was a few units in the center. There were things like bikes in there, and there were things like Lilith and Venoms and all this kind of stuff. And I'm able to basically just clear all of that out. No problem whatsoever. And I've still got an infantry platoon here as well. And I still have my mortars. This is at the end of Dean's turn 3, you see. And I was able to actually clear out the succubus and the other witches as well. So by the end of my turn 3, I've taken care of both witch squads and the Talos and some other like scraplets moving around. It goes over to Dean's turn, and he moves his Void Weavers over here, and he blasts into my Baneblade. But it turns out that I had been playing it way too cagey with the Baneblade. Like, it's like 6 shots from the Void Weavers. You know, I can smoke, so he's hitting on 4s. And then he needs 4s again to start doing damage to me. So I would definitely been... Benefit of hindsight, I'd definitely been overly cagey. I should have just risked it and been really aggressive with the Baneblades and put pressure on him, but... it is what it is. Now, unfortunately for Dean, he does make a massive critical error here. And I'm not going to lie, it is essentially a game-changing error. He just utterly forgets to bring his Scourges in. And truth be told, we both just completely missed it. He had his Scourges, so you can see obviously there's not much spare room on this table. And I don't have any reserves. I basically never put anything in reserve these days because I'm always forgetting about them. And he had his reserves over on this table here, and just by being out of line of sight, he just forgot them. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a shitter. I know Dean in real life. He's a good lad. Like you know, I'd say we're mates, and so. He was like, I've just forgotten them. That's completely fucked. Oh my god. And I said to him, look, mate, I never like this kind of stuff happening. So, look, I said to him, why don't you just bring them in, but put them somewhere like safe. So, you know, maybe you don't like bring them in your turn 3 and like blast my like Baneblade's ass, but you know, just bring them in and put them somewhere like relatively safe. And Dean's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. So what he ends up doing is sort of bringing a unit of the Scourges in down here. And I think he also brought in a unit of Scourges sort of down here. So like, you know, so he didn't miss out on his assets, but he didn't miss out on them. but he didn't punish my sort of generosity for him. And that was I think, pretty fair from both sides. And so in his turn 4, he brought them in turn 3, 1 unit here, 1 unit here. Now, I think it was a little bit of a mistake, but basically, bringing this unit in here, I would have put both units down here. And the reason for that is because the problem is that it then goes over to my turn 4. And what happens is I just roll this Baneblade forward here, and I just pick up one of the unit scourges here. And then I use my mortars here, and I basically like combat ineffective the other unit of scourges here. So they're not really like meaningful. I'm not even sure. I might have wiped them out, you know. I think I did. There was one time when I got 17 shots with the mortars, and then with blast it became 20 hits, and I just rolled like a fiend. And I can't remember which unit it was into, but it must have been into the scourges, because both units were dead by the end of my turn 4. So it was a little bit of a pisser. You know, Dean brings his scourges in, and then they ended up getting destroyed anyway. But I guess, you know, it's just one of those things where, look, you're playing a tournament, guys. You've got to make sure, like, you're remembering your reserves. We tried to do it in sort of a gentleman's way, and in the end, the scourges did end up dying anyway. So it is what it is, unfortunately. And I think that would have made a huge difference. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say, oh, I don't think it would have made a difference anyway. I think if he'd brought 2 unit scourges in and bopped this Baneblade here, that it is a very good chance it could have died. I mean, from the haywire, it took like 6 wounds maybe. So that's just out of 10 Dark Lances. Is it 8 or 10 Dark Lance shots? It would have just needed to basically just like 3 or 4 of those to go through. Well, if we math it out, the Scourges are going to hit on 4s against the smoke. So maybe they get like 4 hits through, and then they're going to wound on 5. Maybe not, actually. Maybe the Baneblade could have taken it. I'm not sure what their power from pain ability is. Maybe the Baneblade could have taken it. But either way, unfortunately, the Scourges didn't quite go off. And because of that, on my turn 4, like I said, I basically mopped the Scourges up. And with the Scourges being gone, it basically takes out the last anti-tank threat that the Dark Elder have. And I'm able to just roll around with my Baneblades with impunity. And this just leads to massive casualties on the Dark Elder side of the board. And this is essentially where the game ends up at the end of turn 4 and turn 5. Because the Baneblades are sort of rolling around, just picking up Dark Elder units. Now, we get to the turn 5. And we realize that it's currently 70 points to the Guard. And it's 62 points to the Dark Elder. And this is the Dark Elder turn 5, right? And the Dark Elder score at the bottom of their turn. So all they need to do to make it a draw, because we're playing using WTC scoring, so you have to get within 5 points of each other to get a draw, is basically get a unit from here over to here. And the only unit that was available to do it, there were 2 units of racks, right? There were 2 units of racks that were essentially both like 1 or 2 man strong. I'd like basically been mortaring them. They've been combat ineffective, like I said. And Dean rolls 2 advance rolls, and he needs a 6 on one of the advance rolls, and he rolls a 5, and he re-rolls it into a 4, and he rolls another one, and he just gets like a 1 or a 2 or something on the advance. And so without those advances, you can't get onto this objective as well. And so it means that he doesn't get those last like 4 or 5 points. And so the game ends with 70 points to the Guard and 62 points to the Dark Elder, with the 2 Baneblades rolling around supreme. But the Baneblades are basically the only things I have left on the board. Like, by the end of turn 5, I don't even hold my own home objective, because the Solitaire basically had killed the Mortars one turn and then killed the Tech Priest another turn. And it's just 2 Baneblades and a Tech Priest are all that are left over. But all the Dark Elder have got left is the Solitaire and a couple of like scraplet rack units. So both sides had absolutely battered each other. And it was actually a really, really close game. And actually, no word of a lie, Dean himself said that this game was one of the best games of 40k 10th edition he's played in a while. And I actually agree with him, because it was really cagey. There was no obvious winner throughout the game. It was very back and forth. And it literally came down to a couple of advanced rolls, and Dean could have got a draw out of this game. And when the game comes down to just a couple of rolls, that is awesome. And it was very satisfying, this game, because it wasn't just one side smashing the other. It was actually both players having to think. We actually got really low on time, even though there wasn't a lot happening, just because we were both having to think and be cagey and plan. And so whilst at the end, the two Baneblades were kind of rolling around, and of course there was the incident with the Scourges being forgotten, I think it is a testament to how much fun this game actually was, that even with Dean making a big fuck up like that, he still came away from it saying it was one of the best games he's played in a long time. And I completely echo that sentiment. And what do I think the outcome of this game would have been if he hadn't forgot the Scourges? I think he could have got that draw. Now, the reason I think he could have got that draw is because I don't think he kills the Baneblade turn 3, but I think he gets it turn 4. That means I don't have that asset available turn 5, and I ended up using one of my Baneblades to do like an action like terraform on like turn 5 just to get myself like extra points. And if I hadn't been able to do that, and then Dean had the maneuverability to maybe get that extra objectives guaranteed with the Scourges, like jump over, I think it might have ended up with him being ahead. I think I might have maybe got like 60. I think I maybe still would have got about 70-ish points, but I think Dean would have ended up getting within 5 points of me. Whether he would have been ahead by like 2 or 3 points, or whether he still would have been behind by 2 or 3 points, I think he would have got within the 5 points, and he could have got a draw. And I think that's almost guaranteed. So it was just a case of a bit of forgetfulness on both sides, reactive moves, and obviously Dean making a big forgetful thing with his reserves. But hey, lesson learned there. We've all done it. Lesson learned. And it happens to the best of us. You know, Dean's an experienced player, so it just goes to show, like, it does happen to the best of us. But lesson learned there. Remember your reserves. And tactical lesson learned from me, I definitely should have been more ballsy with my Baneblades. I was far too conservative with them. And I think I should have just basically taken a round of Haywire on the chin and then just, like, swept aside everything that was up here. I think move forward with the Baneblade, infantry behind, smoke this bad boy up, have the invulnerable save on there, you know, just take the Haywire and whatever else on the chin. I think I probably could have survived it. You know, I have to take 8 Haywire wounds. Between like 8 Haywire wounds from 12 shots, essentially, because 3 from each Talus and Voidweave or something like that. When you actually think about it, hitting on 4s, they're going to hit with 6. Then they're going to get... I should have taken like 9 wounds from the Haywire. So maybe 12, but either way, I would have then been able to repair and just clear all of that out. So lesson learned for me, the Baneblade can take a hit. I need to be less of a pussy with it. So here we are, round 3, and somehow we find ourselves with 2 wins in the bag, and we're actually playing not quite on top table, but actually second to top table, which I'm pretty happy with, considering I'm running double meme Baneblade Recon in Force list, and that this actually was a pretty popular RTT with over 2 dozen players there. So yeah, whatever happens at this point, I am going home and I'm going to be having my victory chicken one way or another. Now, in this third game, honestly, I could not have asked for a more perfect way to end the event, because I got to play against Eddie. Now, Eddie is someone who I've actually played against a couple of times before, and we always seem to play each other in like round 3 of an event at Just Play. The first time and the second time I actually managed to beat him, but every single time that we've played, it has got closer and closer. And he started off as a greenhorn, wet behind the ears, fresh from boot, and now he is actually a really, really good player, and he knows what he's doing. He definitely knows what he's doing. And full credit to him as well, he is a dyed-in-the-wool Raven Guard player. He has been playing his Bird Boys for 2.5 years now, since the beginning of 10th edition, and he truly does believe in fight milk and the power of the crow. But what was in his list? Well, he had a Thunshan, the new Raven Guard character, a captain with a jump pack, he had Shrike, and he had a lieutenant with combi weapon. The lieutenant with combi weapon also had the enhancement, which gives him the 12-inch Vect aura. Then he had an intercessor squad. He had a unit of jump pack intercessors, a big squad of Centurion Devastators, an Inceptor squad, another Inceptor squad, another Inceptor squad, so that's 3 in total. Then he had a Reaver squad, a Scout squad, another Scout squad, 2 Suppressor squads, and then 2 big bricks of Vanguard veterans with jump packs. So it was a pure infantry Raven Guard army, and whilst there was some interesting Eddie tech units in there, like the Reavers and the Suppressors, overall you'll notice there's some very good familiar units in there. If you've been keeping an eye on the competitive meta recently, you'll know things like Vanguard Veterans are doing very well, and Raven Guard Centurions are pretty spicy. The mission for this round was Purge the Foe, and we were playing on UKTC terrain again, and we were deploying with Crucible of Battle deployment. Once again, I found that my Baneblades were kind of forced to go in certain places on this board. The fact that there's only really one way through for them is pretty intense. I mean, I couldn't actually get the Baneblade through this gap either because of its sponsors. Remember, no part of the model can hang over the edge of the board. And I couldn't fit through this way either. Maybe the Baneblade could have squashed in there and then pivoted round, but unlikely. So really, my Baneblades are here. Now, I can get the front of my Baneblade through here, so I can cover this objective here. But really, we're kind of looking at this as more of a central movement channel for my super heavies. I then, for the rest of... so that's why the Baneblades went down here. For my infantry, I basically just put my... I put a blob at the front. I put 2 blobs at the front, 2 blobs behind, and my mortars on the objectives. Eddie deployed essentially just all his Vanguard veterans just like on the line, just there, and the rest of his army were essentially little support units and scraplets going around the edges and just being ready to do some harassing fire, some objective play, that kind of stuff. He did put his Centurions behind the unit behind this wall here, and he had all his jumpy dudes in reserve. With everything deployed, we roll off first turn, and 3 games in a row I went first. I actually deploy assuming I'm going to go first because it happens so often. I can't remember the last time that I actually went second in a game of 40k. In almost any war game, actually, it happens to me all the time. In Old World, which in Old World it's a good thing, but in 40k it's a bit of a curse. Now, I was very aware of what Eddie was going to try and do, you know, stage up here and then have like a big go turn. The one thing that I would say I found a little vexing about playing the new Raven Guard is they felt like they had one too many special rules. So they have the Maz 1 to hit them over long range, essentially, okay, but then they also have like lone op, it seems, everywhere. And then they have uppy downy, which they can put on the Centurions. And then they also have the enhancement for the big Vect aura. And then they also had like a turn 1 rapid ingress, which they could do on like a deep strike unit, which they could do on one of their Vanguard veteran blocks, which I think was also in reserve. So it just felt like, you know, I'm over here and I'm like, oh, I get some cover. Oh, sick. Oh, what do you get? This. It definitely feels like Games Workshop said they weren't going to do a 2.0 Space Marine release, but as someone who's been through several second wave Space Marine releases over the editions, you know, it happened in 7th with the things like Gladius and stuff like that, and the Hammer Strike detachment, whatever it was called. And then it happened in 8th with the Unkillable Chaplain Dreadnoughts, and then it happened in 9th, and now it's happening in 10th. So, you know, you've just got to expect it. I'm not even really that mad. I'm not even mad even slightly. I just find it kind of funny that, you know, it's 10th edition and it's late in the edition and its Space Marines have been overtuned again. It's like, oh, here we are, business as usual. But it's one of those. What can you do, man? But I'll stop bitching, moaning, and whining now. Getting into the turn, I essentially just push forward with my infantry. Big screen line. More to the incest on the back objective. Killed a couple of them, and that was about it. Going over to the Blood Raven turn, they just staged everything. They rapid ingress turn 1, and they didn't really need to do the rapid ingress turn 1, kind of ironically, but it is what it is. And everything just staged up in every ruin, and I was like, oh dear, yeah, here I can see it coming from a mile away. I can see the fist winding up. Oh dear. There was a little bit of jump pack intercessor versus infantry squad screening chicanery going on, but it was mostly here comes, we're getting ready for the big punch. Now, turn 2 for me, I went a little bit cray-cray, but there was method behind my madness. So you can see all the Raven Guard units staged up here, right? And it was very easy for Eddie to, because he basically managed to sort of whittle my screen down just enough with his jump back intercessors, I could see that he was going to be able to move 12 inches to here, and then he can advance and charge with 1 unit. See, I told you there's got 1 or 2 too many rules, right? So we can advance and charge with 1 unit. So I knew he was basically going to go like here over to here, and then basically just like destroy one of my Baneblades. And I knew that because all of the Vanguard veterans have got melter pistols, and they've got Oath of Moment, and they've got Super Oath, that there was a really good chance that he was going to be able to just come in here and destroy this Baneblade that was here. Because it can't really go anywhere, because like that's 12 inches to there, then with an advance he's going to get to there, then that's a charge, right? And he's got another unit of jump back incest, not jump back, Vanguard veterans, which can jump to here. And then it's like a 6-inch charge through the wall with a reroll. So I knew he was going to get the double charge with a lot of melt pistols with Oath of Moment on my Baneblade. So I thought, well, I don't want my Baneblade to die doing nothing. So what I actually did is I pushed this Baneblade forward here. And that was to kind of try and limit the movement, so so when he charged everything, it would end up on this bit rather than it behind my lines, as it were. And that's really good for me because it means I'm sort of limiting his mobility, and at the same time it did give me line of fire onto a couple of units. So there was actually the jump back intercessors that were here, and there are a unit of scouts here. I think there might have also been a unit of scouts that had moved out to like here as well, like just to do some objective play like turn 1 to counter some of my primary points and stuff. And this Baneblade basically moved forward and deleted those 3 units really easily because I was actually within 12 inches of all 3 of them, so no Raven Guard chicanery. Actually, well, they wouldn't have been scouts, they would have been the infiltrator dudes, whatever it was. But anyway, my Baneblade killed, I think it was like 2 or 3 5-man squads, and I was like, okay, he's actually done something. I know he's probably going to die next turn, but let's see what happens. Because you can see I'm ready down here for the big counter push, and I'm ready over here for a big counter push as well. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose like maybe this stuff here, but then I've got Baneblade and 2 big platoons to push back with. Unfortunately for me, things did not quite go to plan. Look at this. Now, I said this when I did my Firstborn tournament, that, and I know that was just a bit of a fun, casual event, but I said this when I ran Marines only a little while ago. You can get a hell of a lot on a Marine list these days. What's essentially happened with them is they've consistently had the points cuts over the last 2 years, but they've not had any rules buffs. They've just had points cuts, and then they've kept those points cuts, those low points now, and then they've just had loads of new rules just like layered on top of them. So I think Marines are a little undercosted at the moment because this is just I'm outnumbered as the guard player, for God's sake. But anyway, turn 2 is the Baneblade Bukkake party, and what's really frustrating is the Baneblade just dies in shooting. Now, I know they've got Oath of Moment, and I know they've got Super Oath as well. But I was kind of hoping the Baneblade would have to die in melee, but it didn't. And because the Baneblade didn't die in melee, it meant that these Vanguard veterans were actually able to charge one of my counterattack units, which was this blob down here. And then they had some sort of precision stratagem for the Raven Guard. So the Lord Solar then died, which I didn't know about, which was terribly vexing. And so I'm not going to lie to you. Basically, this game was really heavily in favor of the Raven Guard by the end of turn 2. Because then the Centurions, whose weakness is meant to be that they're slow, did uppy downy. And they came in over here and they were able to draw line of sight to like one guardsman's like Lascannon that was sticking out over here, which was a bit stupid of me, but it is the rules at the end of the day. And so essentially this turn goes quite badly for me because I lose a lot of this blob here. I lose the Baneblade here. This blob gets tied up and I lose the Lord Solar. And then the other remaining screening units also go down as well from various sources. But it's not completely over. There is actually a way I can get back into this game because the Baneblade is still going and this blob up here, whilst it might look like it's been heavily mashed up, every single special weapon is still alive. All the plasma, all the melter, and Creed, all of that's still going. So going into my turn 3, I actually was like, okay, if I can delete the Vanguard veterans here, and at the very least combat in effect the Vanguard veterans here, but probably actually get them, because I've got 3 plasma guns, Creeds in that unit, so I can do take aim and first rank fire, second rank fire. And I'm going to have 2 melter guns in there, and I've got a plasma pistol in there as well. And then I've got Creed's pistols, duty and honor, which aren't actually that bad as well. And then I've also got grenades. I actually do have, and these are only like, these are just Marines. They've not got the shields because they've got the pistols. So I can actually get them down to a pretty bad save. They're just out in the open if I just basically come through this ruin. So I can actually, if I can get both these Vanguard veteran squads, suddenly this game is back on, because then there's not actually a lot that can deal with this second Baneblade and it can start rolling. Now, part 1 of my plan does go off. The Baneblade, even without take aim, just goes absolutely ham and evaporates the Vanguard veteran squad here and the captain with the jump pack as well. Just completely blows through them. No dramas whatsoever. Unfortunately, Creed lets the side down. Now, I've got 10 plasma shots because I've got first rank fire and take aim thanks to Creed's rule, right? I'm hitting on 3s. I'm wounding on 2s. The Vanguard veterans are on a 6-up save, but Eddie pops Arm of Contempt, so he's on a 5-up save. Now, some of these Vanguard veterans have actually have died. I'm not sure where from, but there's like 1 or 2 of them which have died already. So maybe it's just from like some Overwatch, something that I did, but there's... It wasn't, not with the Baneblade, you can't Overwatch Titanic, but there's 1 or 2 of them that have died already. So I'm like, okay, so I've got a good chance here. I hit twice. I just roll 8 1s and 2s. Years of academy training wasted. And that's GG. Literally, that one thing there is just GG. Oh, no, that wasn't it. They hadn't lost any. I threw grenades at them and killed 2 of them. And then I shoot them with all the plasma. And I hit twice, and then I failed to wound on 2s. Literally double 1. Melter gun manages to, like, kill 1 of them. Creed kills 1 of them, I think, but that's it. There's 7 left. After grenades, plasma, melter, and Creed, there's 7 left. So I don't even think Creed killed 1. I think the melter guns killed 1. Yeah, and that was GG, and that was the end of the game, because basically all that happens now is these guys are going to jump through, delete all of my remaining infantry, and all I've got left is a Baneblade and like a couple of tech priests. Like that's it. But of course, we can't forget the teleporting Centurions. So it goes over to Eddie's turn 3, and the Vanguard veterans go over here and just mash that infantry up. The jumpy dudes and the Centurions delete the Baneblade over here, and that is basically it at that point. All I have is some scraplets of infantry left over, and I have definitely very comprehensively been beaten. Now, we do play out turn 4. It's pretty quick, obviously. I just get whatever points that I can, and then it goes over to Eddie's turn, and he basically kills everything but my mortar teams and a single tech priest. And then we have to do hard dice down, which is a little bit of a shame, because obviously we could have done turn 5 in like a minute or two, but the TO says, look, you have to do hard dice down. And the reason why we have to, and it is important, because I am someone who doesn't mind talking out games. I know some people don't like it, but I'm someone who doesn't mind talking out the games, especially if it's not going to make a big difference to the overall event and the overall tournament. But the thing is, we actually had to we had to properly respect the dice down in this situation, because Eddie was on 3 wins and there was another player who was also on 3 wins, and they had got through all 5 turns of their game. And so it was going to come down to 2 players on 3 wins each who was going to have the most battle points. So look, it makes total sense, and in those situations it's absolutely appropriate you do not talk things out, because otherwise someone could gain an advantage that they shouldn't have. You know, obviously you're meant to have the time you have and all that kind of stuff. So what ended up happening is Eddie won all 3 games and came second, and then Darren, if you know Darren, he's the orc player who has some of the most beautifully converted orcs out there, absolutely fantastic. He's the one that's got WAR2D2. It's an R2D model, R2D2 model, which is converted into a stomper, and Darren actually ended up winning it. So it all ended the way that it should have done, and I think it was almost like the perfect end to the tournament in some ways. And so we get to the end of game 3, and we get to the end of the tournament, and I've managed to get 2 wins and a loss. 1 convincing win, 1 win by the skin of my teeth, kind of like a draw, and 1 fairly convincing loss. Overall tactical thoughts. Firstly, the double Baneblade is definitely a bit of a stat check. It's a ton of fun to run, but if your opponent's not ready for it, it can definitely overwhelm them a little bit. Secondly, the idea of Recon and Force is really cool, and the idea of the Baneblades providing cover is really cool, but you'll notice that throughout this entire event, I never actually mentioned the cover and from the Baneblades affecting the Guardsmen, and that's because it never really did. Unfortunately, the idea, the theory behind the Baneblade doing well in a Recon detachment doesn't actually pay off, because everyone's just got all the cover they need anyway, because look at how dense the boards are. Like, everyone's got cover all of the time, so Recon is either already doing, you know, the double Recon effect, as it were, where you get cover and then you get the bonus. That's already happening, or someone's chopping you up in melee, at which point it doesn't really matter. So I didn't really find that the Baneblades worked all that well. And truth be told, I think that I could have run the exact same list, but with like double Bane Sword instead. Literally. And I would not have had any different tactical implications, and I would have just essentially been running a better list. Having said that, one thing I do want to focus on for a moment is the Baneblade. I was really impressed with the Baneblade. I have completely reevaluated my take on that chassis. It's really good. Do you know what the big difference is? It's the full fat Demolisher cannon. God, the Lehman Russ Demolisher cannon only being D6 with 1 shots is... You sort of get used to it. You sort of get used to eating that shit sandwich, but then you get a taste of the real thing again, and it's like the scales fall from your eyes. In that first game, when I had proper Demolisher cannons and my opponent didn't, it was actually kind of tragic. We both commented on it. We were both like, Demolisher cannons need to go back to D6 plus 3 shots for the guard. Like, it doesn't matter that that is the obvious better choice. It just needs to come back. So the Baneblade is I actually really like it, and I really like it because the full fat Demolisher cannon is fantastic, and the Baneblade cannon itself. Now maybe it's because I didn't ever roll particularly badly with it. I think the lowest amount of shots I got was like 8, but there were a couple of times when I got the big spike. I got like 16 shots with it, 15 shots. I never got the full 18, and the closest I got was maybe like 16 or 17 shots. But I was really just impressed with the overall Baneblade cannon. It's a great weapon. You know, it's just like a mega oppressor cannon. Look, we all love the Rogal Dawn, right? We all love the oppressor cannon. What if we just took a mega version of that? Why would that be bad? It's not. It's great. It's fun. So the fact that the Baneblade's got it's basically got a mega oppressor cannon, a full fat Demolisher cannon, and then on top of that, we've got 4 Lascannons and all those heavy bolters. It actually pumps out a lot of firepower. If you're someone that likes the traditional Baneblade and you're kind of sick and tired of people dabbing on you with like Shadow Swords and Bane Swords and all that kind of stuff, screw that. Take your OG Baneblade. It's actually a totally solid unit, and I would happily run one again. In fact, running double Baneblade, I really enjoyed it. Now, I guess the big question is, if I was to run double Baneblade again, would I do it inside of Recon? No. What I'd probably do is I'd run double Baneblade inside Hammer of the Emperor. And then what I'd do is I probably wouldn't bother with like the mortars. I'd maybe take like 1 mortar team to sit on the home objective, but I wouldn't bother with the mortars or the big infantry blobs. I would end up taking like 3 units of Catachan and like Tauroxes, maybe a couple of units of like Catachans inside Chimeras, go like an elite mech guard route, and then I would essentially take advantage of Crash Through. And I would be thinking, okay, gonna have a Lord Solar there, order 1 Baneblade, push it through, crash through, smash stuff, and then do that again like the next turn. Always have like these firing missiles of like Baneblades at people, and same with like Catachan and stuff like that. I actually do have a list that I have had ready for a while now, but I haven't run, that essentially does that. Because I did notice in all of the games, even that first one, I did notice in all of the games, my Baneblades did struggle to be able to be deployed. Like there was always somewhere for them to go, but it was always really obvious where they were going to go for my opponent, and it was really like I only had very limited movement channels as well. So going Hammer of the Emperor would allow me to crash through. And here's the thing, I kind of ragged on Hammer of the Emperor earlier, but I think with something like a Baneblade, it actually really works, because you don't need to worry, especially a Baneblade, maybe even more than a Bane Sword, right? And the reason why, especially the Baneblade, is because you have all of that volume of strength 12 or higher shots on the Baneblade cannon, on the Lascannon, and on the full fat Demolisher cannon. And so missing out on lethal hits is way less of a factor when you go super hammer. When you go super hammer of the Emperor, rather than relying on Rogal Dawns and being like, I hope I make my 5s when I'm shooting enemy vehicles with these multi-melters, you go, screw that, I'm going to basically be guaranteed to be winning everything on 3s, and I'm not relying on a few nipple melters and stuff like that. I've got the volume because of the Demolisher cannon, Lascannons, and all that kind of stuff. So I really do think there is something to the super hammer. Now, whether you go Bane Swords or whether you go Baneblades, it's kind of up for debate. I'd be very tempted to go Baneblades for it, but I definitely think there's some play to double super heavy Hammer of the Emperor backed up by a shitload of Catachan and then some shit munchers. I think there's something to that. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you think of Recon in Force? Did you enjoy seeing me run the guard at tournaments again? And what do you think about that super hammer list? I know we've just had a double super heavy list, but if I know the guard community, you guys never really get sick of seeing big tanks do big tonk things. So if you want me to run that at the next event I go to, I am more than happy to do that. Just let me know down in the comment section what kind of after action report you want to see next. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to support the channel, then don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, more after action reports and more tactical thoughts, then don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure, and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.